In October of 2022, Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, posted a pretty innocuous photo to his Twitter account just showing off a Vault Boy statue he put on his shelf to celebrate Fallout's 25th anniversary. And the photo started immediately making the rounds and immediately making headlines because tucked away on the top shelf, just peeking out, just barely there, was the unreleased third console in the Xbox Series lineup, codenamed Keystone. Wildly, Keystone was kind of unofficially announced in 2021 when Liz Hamren, who was the head of gaming experiences and platforms at Microsoft, said, quote, "We're also developing a standalone streaming device that you can plug into a TV or monitor, so if you have a strong internet connection, you can stream your Xbox experience." So Keystone was basically supposed to be a set-top box that would allow you to play Xbox games. Now that we've seen the patents, we can confirm that there was an Ethernet port in the back so you could hardwire it if you wanted to, but you could just use Wi-Fi also if you wanted to. And the whole idea was that it was a box that would just play stuff via xCloud or Game Pass. There are some reports that speculate that you might have been able to also download things like Netflix on there so you could have all your streaming services, and it would basically be an Xbox competitor to something like the Apple TV or the Roku or the Google Chromecast. Is it Google Nest now? What is it? They've changed the name of that thing like a million times. I think the new one is just called Google TV, and it's like a big, weird oval that costs like way more than it should. So the whole point of Keystone is that it didn't have a disk drive. You couldn't download games on it. It was just meant for streaming, which was exciting to me, but it's 2024 at the time of this recording, and the Keystone is notably not out. I don't own one. You don't own one. The only person who we can confirm owns one is Phil Spencer based on that tweet. And I think the direction they went with the Keystone makes a lot of sense, but is a little bit of a bummer to me as somebody who really loved things like the PlayStation TV, which I feel like is a weirdly similar device on the PlayStation end. A quick aside, as somebody who loves the PlayStation Vita, I literally have it on... I didn't plan this. I wasn't going to talk about this in this video, but I literally have the PlayStation Vita sitting on my desk right now as I record this. That's how much I love the Vita. The PlayStation TV was the coolest idea because the Vita wasn't selling super well. Sony was basically like, can we take the internals of the Vita, not package it with the screen and all of that stuff, but instead build it into a little set-top box you could plug into your television, and the whole conceit was that it had a cartridge slot so you could play PS Vita games on it, but also you could remote play from your PS4. So hypothetically, the idea being that it was like a way to play your PS4 without needing to buy another PS4. So if you had like 2 rooms in your house, and this will come up later, where you're playing games a lot, you could have your PS4 in the living room and then have the PlayStation TV in like your bedroom or another room. And that's, you could just stream your PS4 to that. It didn't work that well at the time. The PS4, notably, I think the remote play wasn't like great, but it was a cool idea at least. I never got one. I probably should have gotten one, even just for like historical collection purposes. But anyway, these days I do a lot of game streaming. From my PS5 and my Xbox Series X, and even from my PC, and using services like GeForce Now or just Game Pass in general. I play a lot more of my games streamed than I ever thought. I have like a small army of devices that I'm playing all this stuff on. I use my iPhone. I have an Android phone that I use sometimes. I have the Ein Odin 2 Mini, which I love dearly. And using all of those devices, I've just become a really big fan of the kinds of freedom that game streaming can provide. Persona 3 Reload, one of my favorite games of the year by far, is a game that I played mostly via xCloud and Game Pass. Basically what I was doing was just like lying in bed or on the couch or something, and I would play through all the like really tedious, laborious dungeons in that game handheld through something like xCloud. And whenever I got to like an important cutscene or like a big story moment or something, I would save the game, quit, go into the living room, turn on my TV. My save file would just be there immediately, and then I would turn on my Xbox and I would watch that important story moment on the TV instead and just like keep playing there. Honestly, the fact that I can bounce my save file back and forth between wherever I happen to be playing is like legitimately remarkable to me. And I know a lot of people have been experiencing that already on the PC side of things. And as somebody who owns a Steam Deck and just got a PC, I'm experiencing that myself with Steam's cloud saves. But the idea of being able to start playing a game literally completely wirelessly just through like Xbox's servers, and then the next time I turn my Xbox on, my save file is there and I can continue playing, just like rocks. It's so cool. And I think that's kind of one of the bigger things about game streaming for me is like I was using it, or trying to use it, I should say, when it was really, really bad. But now it's like past the point of usable. I would even go as far as saying it's good. And for me and my playing habits, it's become almost preferable. And I don't even have very good internet, if I'm being honest. I live in a Brooklyn apartment with like one of the worst upload speeds I've ever experienced in any of the places I've lived. And it works like all right, which is very cool. I would even go as far as saying that I think in some ways xCloud and Game Pass are like maybe the most exciting parts of this console generation to me. Because on one hand, you have Sony with PlayStation. I like the PS5. I think it's like a fine device, but it's just kind of a fine device, you know? They're playing the hits. Here's a new console. It's more powerful than the last one. Here are some first-party exclusives that take a really long time and a lot of money to make that make use of that new hardware. Now we're at the point where we're getting the mid-cycle hardware upgrade with the PS5 Pro now that those images have leaked. It just feels like we're doing the same thing we did last generation, kind of the same thing Sony tried to do the generation before that, and honestly, even before that with the PS2. It's just a kind of tried and true playbook, and it's not that they're not trying things here and there. Again, I'm using remote play a lot more than I was expecting to this generation with my PS5, but this idea that Xbox has on kind of a higher level of uncoupling Xbox from the actual physical box under your TV, I think is really interesting. Xbox has kind of become a whole ecosystem of ways to play video games. And we're a little bit hampered at the moment, right? Because the only Xbox games you can play through xCloud are games that are on Game Pass, and everything else you'll have to play through remote streaming from your Xbox console. But Microsoft has already gone on record as saying they want to make it so if you buy a game through the Xbox store, you will be able to play it through xCloud, regardless of if you have an Xbox under your TV or not. All of that leads me back to the Keystone, which is, I think, the perfect device for my needs in particular, and I'm sure a lot of other people's needs as well. Because right now I have a Xbox Series X like sitting under my television, and whenever I want to play Xbox games in this room, you know, whether I be streaming or capturing stuff for videos like this, I have to carry my Series X back and forth between that room and this room, and like, yeah, it looks like a sweet baby that you're caressing and bringing with you back and forth between different rooms, but I don't want to do that, because if I drop it or if something goes wrong, then I'm out a couple $100, and that seems pretty terrible. I could very easily remedy this with something like the Series S, I'm sure, but wouldn't you rather pay way less than that? And that's kind of where the Keystone fits in. Hence the name Keystone. It was like kind of the perfect middle point that made the entire strategy make sense, the entire Xbox strategy. You had the Xbox Series X for the like hardcore Xbox people and people who like need stuff in 4K or whatever. You have the Series S for people who were like maybe Nintendo diehards or PlayStation diehards or whatever. Maybe they're PC people, but they just wanted kind of like a low cost way of getting into the Xbox ecosystem while still being able to download and play your stuff natively. The Series S is for you. I owned one. It was a great device. It was very cool. And then the Keystone, which is this perfect like third console. It's this perfect third thing for people who are like maybe even tangentially interested in video games, right? Like people who do not want to spend even the $200 that a Series S would cost. Is that how much it costs? $300. The Xbox Series S is $300. So if you don't want to spend $300 or however much the Series X costs these days, the Keystone was your way of getting into the Xbox ecosystem. It's like the cheapest possible way of doing that, which I think, honestly, was a really good idea. But I think more importantly, the Keystone was kind of this, like, symbol. It was this symbol of what Xbox was trying to do with this generation, right? Because let's be real, they're not beating PlayStation right now when it comes to, like, big first-party exclusives, Concord excluded. What they're all about right now is getting people to invest in Game Pass for like long periods of time, or investing in the Microsoft Store in general and buying Xbox games for their library. And the Keystone was a great way of allowing those people to play that stuff on any device they want, and also their TV or like another monitor if they wanted to. So the big question is, if Keystone made so much sense and was such an obvious slam dunk for this Xbox lineup that we have right now, why didn't they release it? Speaking to The Verge, Phil Spencer said basically they just couldn't get the price right. They really wanted to include a controller with it, and when you include a controller with the hardware that they had in the Keystone device, it ended up being over the around $129 or under $99 price point that they were really aiming for. And that's a little bit of a bummer as somebody who like wants one of these things, but it totally makes sense to me as well as somebody who's like interested in the games industry, because I can understand why you would want the price point between Keystone and the Series S to be as significant as the price point difference between the Series S and the Series X. And I think for me, personally, the highest price I would pay for something like the Keystone probably is somewhere in the realm of $99, especially if it came with a controller. So instead of Keystone, what do they do? Because obviously game streaming is still very important to Microsoft and the Xbox ecosystem. Microsoft on a higher level, removed from games, is all about services, streaming. That's like their bread and butter. Has been for a long time, and they want it to be with Xbox. So they refocus that team's efforts off of the Keystone and onto a streaming app. And like, that's fine. I would like it, I would like to not be using Safari on my iPhone anymore. And I know that's more of an Apple problem than it is an Xbox problem, but I would really like for like any device that I own to be able to use the Xbox streaming app. And I think in some ways having Xbox just build the hardware made more sense to me than needing to try and like pair a controller with my Apple TV so I can get that to run instead, which again, that also won't work. Maybe I should not be using an Apple TV is the answer here. But I think the biggest thing, honestly, that really sticks out to me about the Keystone, this idea of it as your entry point into the Xbox ecosystem, is it's also hypothetically the cheapest entry point into like video games right now. If you can get a device cheaper than the Nintendo Switch even, that you can plug into your TV, again, had a controller bundled with it or something, and you could peruse the Xbox library, buy games, whatever, but not have to spend even $250 to $300 to get into that space. That makes gaming a lot more approachable, a lot more accessible to a lot of people. And that's the thing that's always been so exciting to me about this idea of a game streaming future. Now, I know a lot of people bristle at that, and I do too. There's a part of my brain that also bristles at that because I'm like, the idea of ownership over your games. I mean, even something like Concord, right? Concord is a game that just launched this month, is getting shut down at the end of this week. They're giving refunds to all the players, but as soon as they made that announcement on the PlayStation blog, they delisted the game from all web services. So you can't buy it on the PlayStation Store, you can't buy it on Steam or Epic or what have you. That game is just like gone and it's missing, and that's kind of the benefit, quote unquote, to the companies when they decide to make a decision like that. They could just like erase an entire video game from existence. But I also think separate from all of that, there is a version of video games that can be for more people as long as the price is lowered more and more and more and more. And that's definitely at odds with the PlayStation way of thinking, right? Where the cheapest PlayStation you can get, I think right now is $500. And then if you want to play games online, you have to pay for a subscription on top of that. And each game is going to be $60 to $70. Like, that's a huge investment, right? And look, this is not supposed to be some kind of like Xbox first PlayStation video, to be clear. I do not have any allegiances to any of these companies at all. The thing I do have an allegiance to is allowing more people to play video games. And, even if it's for like weird corporate nightmare reasons, right now, Xbox's interest in doing so aligns with my own. I just want more people to be able to play video games. And the more money Microsoft dumps into xCloud and Game Pass and game streaming and things like the Keystone and Xbox apps popping up all over the place, the more people can get into those games. And I think that's a net positive for the community of people who want to be playing video games. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I'm a bit under the weather, so I don't know. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, everybody.